The small coastal town of Harborview, Oregon, lived in rhythms of salt and silence, a place where the waves carried both whispers and wounds. The sea had its own way of reminding people that everything lost eventually found the shore again. Inside a cafe that smelled of cinnamon and rain, Nora Bennett sat by the window, tracing the rim of her mug with her finger. It had been 4 years since she'd gone on a real date. 4 years since she'd allowed hope to creep quietly back into her heart. Her daughter Emma was 8 now, bright, curious, and the only reason Nora still believed in mornings. Most days, Nora woke before dawn, packed lunches, tied hair ribbons, and smiled through exhaustion before heading to her job at the local clinic. Nights were spent studying nursing courses online, fighting sleep between lessons. She wasn't looking for perfection anymore, just decency. Just someone who wouldn't look at her and see a mistake to be pitied. Her friend Leah had insisted she try again. "You've built a life, Nora. You deserve to share it." And so she had agreed, reluctantly, to meet a man named Mark Walters, a financial advisor new in town. He'd seemed charming over text, polite, maybe even kind. Now, watching the rain slide down the window, she tried to slow her heartbeat. She smoothed the sleeves of her cream sweater, the one Emma said made her look like a cloud, and touched the small beaded necklace her daughter had made her. Bright pink plastic letters spelled hope. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, like her. The bell above the cafe door chimed, and there he was, Mark, tall, sharply dressed, with that effortless confidence of men who believed the world tilted slightly in their favor. His watch gleamed, his shoes looked expensive. He smiled as he approached, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hi, Nora," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. "You look nice. This place is cozy." "Thank you," she said softly. "It's one of my favorites." At first, everything seemed fine. They talked about small things, the weather, the best seafood near the pier, how hard it was to find parking on weekends. He made her laugh once. It wasn't the loud, free kind of laughter she used to have, but it was something. Then he asked about Emma. "So, you mentioned you have a kid." "Yes," Nora said, smiling faintly. "Emma, she's 8. She's my world." Mark's smile thinned. "Ah, so you're a single mom." Nora nodded. "Yes, just the two of us." He leaned back in his chair, swirling his coffee like it was a glass of wine. "You know, I gotta hand it to you. I don't think I could ever do that. Must be tough dragging all that baggage." Her breath caught. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, as if the words were harmless. "No offense, really. It's just that most guys, they want a clean start, you know? Not something that comes with history, kids, ex-husbands, complications." She blinked, her pulse stuttering. "Complications?" He smirked. "Yeah, I mean, come on. It's like buying a used car, and it runs fine, but you know someone else drove it first." The air left her lungs all at once. She sat frozen, the sound of chatter fading to a muffled roar in her ears. Every cruel word, every whispered judgment from years past seemed to echo all over again. Single moms are damaged. She couldn't keep her marriage. Who would want that? Her hands trembled. Shame burned her throat like acid. And then, from across the cafe, a deep voice broke through the suffocating silence. "You might want to rethink that sentence." The voice was steady, not loud, but clear enough to slice through every whisper in the room. Nora turned. A man had stood up from a table near the corner. He was tall, his dark hair tied loosely at the back of his neck. His white shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hands were rough, his jaw lined with stubble, and beside him sat a boy, maybe 9, scribbling in a sketchbook. Mark frowned, irritation flaring. "Excuse me? Are you talking to me?" The stranger didn't flinch. He took a step closer, calm but certain. "Yeah, I am. My son's sitting right there. He just heard you call this woman used goods." and he asked me why a man would ever say that about someone. The cafe went still. Mark laughed nervously. It was a joke. The man's eyes hardened. No, it wasn't. It was cowardice dressed as humor, and I'm not letting my kid grow up thinking cruelty makes you honest. Mark's voice rose, defensive. Who the hell are you? He straightened his posture, voice low and grounded, someone teaching his son what respect looks like. Nora sat in disbelief, part of her humiliated, another part silently grateful for the stranger's courage. The man turned toward her, his voice softening instantly. Are you all right? Her lips trembled. I think so. He nodded. Good. Don't let anyone like that decide your value. Mark scoffed again, muttered something under his breath, and left, his shoes clicking sharply on the tile as the bell above the door rang behind him. The cafe exhaled. The man gave a small, almost shy smile. I'm Ben Carter, by the way. This is my son, Owen. The boy looked up from his drawing, blue eyes bright. Hi. Nora smiled weakly. Hi, Owen. That's a cool drawing. It's a robot, he said proudly. It fixes broken things. Ben smiled softly. He gets that from me. I'm a mechanic, boats mostly, sometimes trucks. Guess fixing runs in the family. Nora laughed quietly, the tension easing from her shoulders. Second chances sound like your specialty. He tilted his head. They usually find me when I'm not looking. For the first time in a long time, Nora felt seen, not as someone's leftover, not as someone to be pitied, but as a woman who'd survived. Ben motioned toward his table. Would you like to join us? Owen was just convincing me to try the chocolate pie. I could use the backup. She hesitated. Then she smiled. A real smile this time. I'd love to. They talked for hours. About work, about kids, about the strange way grief teaches you to notice small joys. Ben told her he'd lost his wife, Emily, to cancer 3 years ago. Some days I still wake up and reach for her hand, he said quietly, but life doesn't stop just because we break. It just shifts. Nora listened, her heart aching, not from pity but recognition. They were both survivors of different storms. When they finally left, Ben walked her to her car. The rain had stopped, but the street still glistened. You know, he said, you shouldn't ever apologize for being strong, even when people mistake it for weakness. She nodded, voice soft. Thank you for standing up back there. He smiled. For what it's worth, I wasn't standing up for you. I was standing with you. That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed the sound of his voice, calm, certain, kind. Not a savior's voice, but the kind that came from someone who had learned empathy the hard way. They ran into each other again 2 weeks later at the same cafe. This time, it wasn't awkward. It felt almost meant to be. Owen and Emma met and immediately bonded over milkshakes and drawings. Ben and Nora talked until the cafe lights dimmed for closing. After that, Sunday afternoons became their ritual. Walks by the pier, coffee refills that turned into hours, conversations that went from polite to personal. Nora learned that Ben's shop, Carter Marine Repair, sat right at the docks, where old fishermen brought their tired boats to be reborn. He showed her photos of the vessels he'd rebuilt, engines covered in rust turned into polished steel again. Machines, he said once, are a lot like people. You can't just replace the broken part and expect it to run right. You have to understand where the damage came from. She never forgot that line. Over the months, laughter came easier. She started bringing Emma to the shop after school. Owen taught her to sketch. Ben would stop his work just to share lunch with them on the dock's edge, legs dangling over the water. Somewhere between shared silence and shared stories, something gentle took root. It wasn't the reckless love of youth. It was quieter, like morning sunlight after a storm. One evening, as the sky turned gold over the harbour, Nora stood watching the boats. Ben joined her, hands in his pockets. "You know," he said, "people call us broken, but I think we're just rebuilt differently." She smiled softly. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." He nodded. "No, maybe it's the best thing." Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "You deserve someone who never makes you feel like a burden. You deserve to rest." Her eyes filled, and she turned toward the sea so he wouldn't see the tears. "I used to think love was something you earned by being perfect," she whispered. "Now I think it's something that finds you when you stop pretending." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think that's how it finds me too." Months later, in that same cafe, Ben got down on one knee. Owen and Emma giggled in the background, whispering too loudly to be subtle. The other customers clapped quietly when they realized what was happening. He held out a small silver ring, hands trembling just enough to make it real. "You once told me," he said, "that you wanted to feel worthy again. But Nora, you were never unworthy. You were just waiting for someone to see what was already there." Tears streamed down her face. "Ben," he smiled through his own, "you fix things I didn't even know were broken. Will you marry me?" She nodded, laughing through her tears. "Yes, always yes." They married on the beach at sunset, the ocean whispering in rhythm with their vows. Emma tossed flower petals ahead of her mother. Owen held the rings like a knight guarding a treasure. When Ben took her hand, his voice shook as he said, "You were never anyone's second choice, Nora. You were my first miracle." And under that fading light, every cruel word she had ever carried, every judgment, every shame, washed away with the tide. Because love hadn't saved her, it had simply reminded her she was never broken at all.